Oké, ik begin deze video in het Nederlands omdat dat mijn eerste taal is, maar ik heb in mijn leven meerdere talen geprobeerd te leren. En de talen waarvan ik zou zeggen dat ik ze spreek zijn Duits, Japans en obviously English. Dan ga ik ervan uit dat je deze subtitles leest om te begrijpen wat ik zeg, maar wat nou als dat niet nodig was? Wat als ik welke taal dan ook kon spreken en je het nog steeds kon begrijpen? Hier is een voorbeeld. Kijk of dat je dit begrijpt.
Das ist meine Hand. Verstehen Sie das? Hand, Kopf. Das ist mein Kopf. Verstehen Sie Kopf? Ja? Das ist Mr. Spock, ja? Mr. Spock hat zwei Ohren. Ohren. Verstehen Sie Ohren? Er hat zwei Ohren.
Nou, dit voorbeeld en mijn eigen ervaringen met de talen die ik heb geleerd zijn voor mij het bewijs dat je helemaal geen taal hoeft te leren om hem te kunnen begrijpen. Oftewel dat je een taal kan begrijpen zonder te hoeven leren. Welke taal dan ook. Maar hoe kan dat? Dan ben ik zelf dus 4 keer door het proces gegaan van een andere taal leren. Maar alle 4 de talen heb ik op een totaal andere manier geleerd. En dus wil ik je uitleggen hoe dat proces er telkens uitzag. En hoe ik daaruit heb kunnen concluderen dat een taal leren en een taal kunnen begrijpen echt compleet verschillende dingen zijn. En als je dat doorhebt, dan kun je welke taal dan ook beheersen. So I guess I'll start with English, which besides Dutch, I think I spent the least amount of time actually learning, but am actually the most proficient at. Of course, you could say the languages are quite similar. If you look it up on Google, it says that I think they are 80% similar actually, but I think there's another reason, in my case at least. Now, of course, I had to learn English at school as well. It's mandatory in high school, but I would say at that point I already knew how to speak English quite well. As a matter of fact, the things that they teach you at English class is the knowledge that you need in order to complete tests and make exams. And most of the time when I had an exam and I could ask my classmates as well, they would say, I just guess what the answer is based on what sounds right in my head. And that is pretty interesting, because this proves that somehow the grammar has already been learned and is also already in your head. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to tell what is correct and what is incorrect when taking an English test. So what's going on? Now in my case, where I got that knowledge from is from basically everything that I did when I was younger. And that is mostly playing games, watching movies, looking up things online, and all of this on the internet. Like, as you can see, even my laptop is in English. I am speaking English right now, and just the amount of English that I have used during my life is incredible. I remember times when I was younger and I was playing on my PlayStation, there would be games that were in English, and sometimes I didn't know what I had to do in order to progress the game. So what I did is I went online and I looked up tutorials and gameplay videos, and eventually I knew what to do, even though my English wasn't that great, but I just got exposed a lot to the English, and because there's this context of the game and me being familiar with the game, I kind of picked up that English unconsciously. So if I had to summarize how I learned English, I would say that I had already learned a lot of English before actually learning consciously in school, by playing games and enjoying media and content and just being around English, using it a lot, being exposed to it. For example, when playing games, when watching movies, or just anything related to my interests. Also, wie habe ich dann Deutsch gelernt? Hier in den Niederlanden muss man Englisch lernen in der Schule, aber weil ich gerne Sprachen lerne, habe ich auch Deutsch gelernt in der Schule für 5 Jahre. Now, according to another random Google search, you can see that German and Dutch are actually really similar. But in terms of grammar, German is known to be pretty difficult when it comes to grammar, because there's this case system. So obviously what happens in German classes, you get taught a lot about grammar and German grammar and how it works, which makes sense, right? Now this is where it gets interesting. Now, I'm going to show you 2 sentences in German, and I'm going to explain to you some of the grammar the same way I was taught in German class. Ich gehe in die Schule and Ich bin in der Schule. Now, if you don't speak German at all, try and guess and see if you know what this means. Now, the interesting thing is when you look at this part, you can see that it's different, right? Well, that's because these 2 sentences answer 2 different questions. One of them is the answer to what do you do? For example, hey, what do you do in life? Like, do you work or do you go to school? And the other one is, where are you right now? Like, where are you? I am in school. I'm in school, at school. So I realized I didn't give you the example how school teaches you this stuff. So this is how school teaches the grammar, right? So in German you have cases. So cases are hard to explain, but basically let's look at 2 out of 4 cases in German. The accusative case and the dative case. Akkusativ und Dativ. So accusative is indirect object. Dativ is direct object. If you don't know what indirect or direct objective is, indirect objective is when you say I eat an apple. Ich esse einen Apfel. I am the subject, eat is the verb, and an apple is the thing that I eat. That is the indirect object. So in German, the apple part is einen Apfel, because that is the indirect object, you have to say einen Apfel and not ein Apfel or eine Apfel. So first of all, in school you have to learn this whole grammar of what is a subject, what is a verb, what is an indirect object, and those kind of things. Then you have to learn that there are cases, and you have to know when each part of a sentence is what case. And then when you figure that out, you have to know how to write something, because the conjugation changes on what case you're using. These are all the articles, like the or a in English. Der, das, die, den, das, die. It could be either of these depending on which case it is written in. Imagine if you're trying to speak German and you have to think about all of this stuff while speaking. That's impossible. It takes time and effort. The grammar, the German grammar teaches you that this kind of stuff happens in the German language. And you can see grammar as like a universal language. You know, like with music theory, you can basically have music theory and apply it to different instruments. It doesn't matter what instrument you play, as long as you know some of the theory, you can apply that to different instruments. Well, the same thing is true for grammar. If you have some knowledge of grammar in general, then you can apply some of the things to other languages, and it makes understanding languages easier. But it is not necessarily useful if you want to learn how to speak it. And besides, learning this grammar takes time and effort. Now, I kind of struggled with the grammar in German, but it isn't that bad, I guess. Now, remember what I said about English, that I liked to play games? Well, I remember a time when I was playing a lot of Call of Duty, and I met these people online. They were German people, and they didn't speak any English. And I played with them, and then I added them on Skype. And so we would talk every now and then in German. Now, what exactly does that do to your brain? First of all, I could practice my own German, but most importantly, they spoke their native German to me. So I could listen and I could try to understand. And now the difference is that when I speak German to them, I have to think, because I have to make sure that the grammar is correct and that I'm saying things right. Whereas when they spoke to me, they didn't think at all. I mean, it's their native language. They don't have to think about it. They just speak. So we talked a lot, and I listened. And during this time, I got to be exposed a lot to the grammar that I had been learning in German class. Now, let's say two of us were talking. Like, these were three people. Let's say I had a conversation with one of them, and I would ask one of them, let's call him Luca. I think he was called Luca. Let's say I asked him, hey, what do you do? Do you work or do you go to school? And he answers, ja, ich gehe noch in die Schule. Then I would understand that as, oh, well, he goes to school. He doesn't work or anything. No, he goes to school. Now imagine another conversation. I was talking to him, and this time I am asking him, hey, where are you? And he would answer, oh ja, ich bin in der Schule. Now your brain will unconsciously pick up that in the first sentence, die Schule is used, and in the second one, der Schule. And that the difference was the context in which the sentence was used. Or like I said before, the question that it answers. Now your brain picking this up is unconscious and takes no time and no effort at all, compared to the learning of the grammar, which takes time and effort. And now just imagine, like I said with English, if I were exposed to a lot of native German and I would pick up all these things, then eventually if I were to take a test on German, I would be able to say, this sentence, it seems incorrect or correct. And I would not be able to tell, grammatically speaking, why, but I would be able to say, well, it just sounds right or it just sounds wrong, just like with those English tests. And now this process is how we naturally acquire any language, and I can promise you 100% that it works, because, well, everyone who is watching this video right now has done it at least once before in their life. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? Now, before we get to that process, let me share my experience with learning Japanese. Now, for Japanese, I didn't go to a school. I didn't consciously learn the grammar that way, but I did study grammar, most of it online, all by myself, just by watching videos, by using the internet. And I realized that I really liked the grammar. Like the grammar was interesting to me, and that is what I liked about the language. And therefore, I put more emphasis on trying to understand the language rather than trying to speak it. Now, if I wanted to acquire that grammar, I would have to expose myself to a lot of Japanese and native material so that my brain doesn't have to think anymore when I want to speak something. So nowadays, I really try to focus more in immersion, and I believe that that is one of the best ways to improve your language skills. En dat is dus precies hoe een baby zijn taal leert, door te luisteren. En ik ben erachter gekomen dat ik dus met een soort probleem zit. Mijn brein, dat houdt van grammatica, is op die manier Japans gaan leren, en de grammatica en de kanji en alles wat de taal zo interessant maakt. Maar een ander deel van mij dat wil sociaal zijn en wil met mensen praten en een cultuur ontdekken en wil daarvoor de taal gebruiken. Nou ben ik mijn hele leven al geïnteresseerd in taal. Ik kan er echt uren over praten en lezen en whatever. Maar als het gaat om de beste manier om een taal te leren spreken, dan denk ik niet dat dat is door de grammatica te gaan leren en hoe de taal werkt. Gebruik je brein waar het goed voor is en dat is voor het oppakken van patronen in taal en de connecties maken. En dat is precies wat je doet nadat je geboren bent door heel veel te luisteren. Want als je veel naar de taal luistert, dan kun je je brein context geven en zo kunnen er makkelijker connecties worden gemaakt. En zo kun je onbewust toch een taal leren. Dan zijn er verschillende onderzoeken naar gedaan en ik vind het echt fascinerend om hierover te lezen. Zeker omdat het ook zo relatable is. Het lijkt zo erg te kloppen. Ik heb er ook een video van gemaakt een tijdje geleden die je kan kijken als je wilt. And I'm basically 100% convinced that it is possible to acquire a language this way. So what if I tried that out? What if I took a language and tried to acquire it this way just by listening, immersing myself with a bunch of context? So I'm going to experiment with that and I'm going to try and acquire a language this way. If you're interested to see that journey and my results, then you can subscribe if you want and then I'll see you in another video. Bye bye.